Welcome back to Unmute. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew something wasn't right, but weren't sure what to do? Maybe you witnessed bullying, or maybe you're struggling with your own mental health. Here at Unmute, we believe that silence is the enemy of progress. This is a space to have open conversations about the challenges young people face today and to explore ways to break the silence and build a more supportive world. So join us as we unmute the conversation on mental health and bullying prevention. Together, we can create positive change.
Welcome back to Unmute. Today we're tackling a crucial topic for every school community, mental health. Joining me today is Michael Smith, a counselor at High Broughton High School. We'll discuss mental health first aid, what it is and why it's important for students, and how it can be applied throughout high school. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Smith.
Thank you for having me.
So let's jump right in. Can you explain what mental health first aid is and how it relates to students?
Yeah, so mental health first aid was actually created in Australia, but it is a training for adults, teenagers, and people who work with teenagers to help them kind of see signs and symptoms of mental health and how to get them to appropriate help. It's kind of like first aid CPR, but for mental health.
That's a very powerful concept. Why is mental health first aid especially important for high school students?
High school students, they're going through a lot of time of transition and a lot of things change in there. There's social settings that can cause pressure. They're dealing with their own mental health issues on top of family issues and everything else too. So high school students kind of have a better understanding of what's going on in their life and kind of where some of those mental health disorders kind of start to really pick up.
Absolutely. Can mental health first aid be applied differently for different grade levels?
Yes, it can. Actually, mental health first aid, there's three different types of trainings. There's teen mental health first training that we do here at High Brighton, which we usually start in 10th grade. There's adult mental health aid. There's also youth mental health first aid. So I have taught classes to where even for elementary teachers of how to recognize some of those signs and symptoms and how to get them to appropriate help. So yeah, it can be applied to very many different grade levels.
Now let's get a little more practical. Can you share an example of how mental health first aid can help a student experiencing anxiety before a big test?
Yes. Sometimes people don't even recognize they know something's different, but they don't recognize those symptoms or signs that they're dealing with anxiety. So mental health first aid or people who teach that can help them learn how to deal with anxiety. We can't make it go away, but we can teach you like some deep breathing techniques, who to seek for help and things like that too. So there are things that we do teach. And a lot of times what I have found when you just talk with students about anxiety, they feel more relieved when they're not the only people going through it, because people with anxiety feel like they're the only ones that feel this way, and they feel more relieved when like, oh, more people feel this way than I thought.
What advice would you give to a student who witnesses bullying and intervene using mental health first aid principles?
First thing I tell them is not to put themselves in any dangerous situation. You know, if it's something like a fight or somebody's really beating them, I encourage them to go find an adult first. You know, in mental health first aid, we teach safety first, just like first aid and CPR does, because if you put yourself in a dangerous situation, now we got two crises on our hands. But just being there for that student, if they witness the bully, to stand up for them and just kind of being there for them to talk to us, say, hey, I noticed these guys were saying these things about you and making fun of you. What can I do to help? Would you like to go talk to someone? Just being there as a support a lot of times is the most powerful thing.
Great. So let's shift gears. What are some common signs and symptoms of mental health concerns in young people that students might be able to recognize using mental health first aid?
Some of the most ones that stand out to you most is you see their behaviors change. Somebody who might have been very outgoing and always hanging out with friends start withdrawing. They start missing school more. They change maybe they like to do activities like dancing, playing sports, and all of a sudden they stop doing everything. They haven't replaced it with anything. A lot of times those are some of the biggest warning signs. I would say withdrawal is one of the key ones. You know, as teenagers, parents are not cool anymore, so you withdraw from your parents anyway. But when they withdraw and won't talk to anybody is a big concern.
That's important to be aware of. Now we've heard some concerns about mental health first aid. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about it?
I think a lot of people, just mental health in general, people think someone who struggles with mental health, there's something wrong with them, they're dangerous. Society kind of paints people with mental illness as the ones that shoot up buildings and everything else, which is actually the opposite. A lot of people who suffer with mental illnesses are more likely to be victims of crime than commit crime.
That's a great point. Moving forward, how can educators and parents work together to create a culture of mental health awareness and support in schools?
I think just being open about it. When I grew up, mental health was taboo. It was not something you talked about. Mental health was kept quiet. And we do that as human beings because when we don't understand something, we kind of make it bad and fear it. But just being able to talk about it, doing things like we're doing right now and teaching it in the schools, just being open to listening to other people who are struggling with that and being there for them is the key things I think that helps with taking those, helping mental health be more in the forefront.
That's very fantastic. Do you have any final thoughts on the importance of mental health first aid in schools?
I'm glad we're able to do it now. I've been a trainer for mental health first aid for going on close to 15 years now. And a lot of it originally started with, just organizations and stuff. We got to train teachers, which I think has been very helpful. And the new training for teen mental health first aid, I've already heard, we've been doing it for 2 years here at High Brighton. And I've already heard good things from students who said, I was able to talk to my friend where I would have been afraid to talk to them without the training. It kind of empowers them to say, hey, I can do this.
Mr. Smith, thank you so much for sharing your insights. This has been incredibly informative.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
For our listeners who want to learn more, we encourage you to visit the National Council for Mental Wellbeing's website on mental health first aid. We'll also include the link in the show notes.